Hi there, John Wilkinson here on the History Made Easier channel. In the past, I've done a video that looked at the causes of World War I by linking fundamental factors with the July crisis. And I've done a video that suggests that war might have actually happened earlier, when the European powers almost plummeted into a major war as a result of the Balkan Wars in 1912-13. In this video, I'm going to head in the opposite direction, and I'm going to suggest that war might not have happened. And it's an important point for us as historians, because history was never inevitable. People always had choices. I've got my page references here, and I've got my laptop here because I'm going to use an ebook that I've almost finished writing that looks at the causes of World War I. And its concluding section is titled, "Was War Inevitable?" I'm going to begin by looking at the opening of the Keel Canal. That was an important waterway for Germany. You'll see why. This is what I write. It is worth noting that the opening of the Kiel Canal in June 1914, the canal that enabled German ships to pass in safety from the Baltic to the North Sea and so threaten the British Navy, was attended by a squadron of British warships. Officers and crew boarded each other's ships as the week-long festivities took place. Indeed, when the Kaiser went on board the battleship King George V, he did so dressed in his uniform of a British Admiral of the fleet. Queen Victoria had given him it as a present, and he was technically the senior Royal Navy officer on board. On June the 28th, though, there was a yacht race, the Kaiser himself taking part. He loved to race his yacht. It was whilst on his yacht that a telegram was brought by launch informing him of the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand and his wife. The race was cancelled and the celebrations brought to an end. It's an important illustration because it shows on the very day that the Archduke was assassinated, Britain and Germany, though they had their rivalries, the naval race, economic rivalry, they were also able to get on. There was a positive side to their relationship. A month after this event I describe, and these two countries are at war. It was not inevitable. That's my point. I'm now going to turn to a piece that focuses on Russia. And I'm going to talk about a memorandum sent to Tsar Nicholas by Peter de Novo. Now, he was a former Minister of the Interior, and he had actually played a big part in bringing the 1905 revolution to an end. But this is what he has to say to the Tsar, and it's so important. He argued that Russia had nothing to gain from defeating Germany. Never mind that Russia traded with Germany more than any other nation. Germany was the major bulwark in Europe against socialism and liberalism. And they would, if they could, bring an end to Russian autocracy. War would also leave Russia dependent on more French loans, British loans too. And with German power destroyed, Russia's allies, Britain and France, would have no more use of it. And he repeated the argument that others had used about the Straits. Russian control might help Russia to stop unwanted ships reaching the Black Sea, but it wouldn't guarantee Russian ships access to the Mediterranean and beyond. That would remain in the control of the British Navy. De Novo, unlike most military experts, also warned that a European war was likely to be long, and that the more advanced countries, industrially and with regard to their financial structures, would have a big advantage over Russia, especially as the Straits would most likely be closed during the war. What is more, Russian railways wouldn't be able to cope with the strains of war. And as far as the Russian military was concerned, it was sorely lacking in heavy artillery and machine guns, and that Russia would not be able to develop new weapons during the war, something he thought Germany would be likely to do. Finally, he thought that win or lose, Russia was likely to face a revolution. If Russia lost, he thought revolution was highly likely. But even if it won, he thought there would be a revolution in Germany that could well spread to Russia. And even before the war's end, if that war was to be a prolonged war, he thought the strain on Russia's economy and the likely fact that there would be military setbacks at some point would bring about revolution. And incidentally, he also thought that revolution was likely to be socialist in nature. Well, if only the Tsar had listened to him. But now I want to turn to France. And I want to turn to the French socialist Jean Jaurès, who had worked tirelessly for peace. Just let me get my page number just to give you a little quote from Jean Jaurès. And again, you'll see just how some people in Europe could see just how awful war was likely to be. This is what Jean Jaurès had to say about the likely nature of war. He wrote, "The cannon fire and the bombs, entire nations decimated, millions of soldiers strewn in mud and blood, millions of corpses." If only any of the leaders had listened to him. Austria-Hungary. Franz Ferdinand, over the various crises leading up to his assassination and World War I, over those crises, at times Franz Ferdinand was tempted to opt for war, but on the whole he was a voice for peace. And he thought he had a solution to the Slav problem, which he hoped would also be a solution to the Serb problem. Now, Austria-Hungary had become a dual monarchy. The Hungarians had been pushing for greater autonomy, and the Austrians had given them it, hence Austria-Hungary. His solution was, why not go three ways? Why not give more autonomy to the Slavs? In this way, it will bring the Slavs that are in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, those Slavs from Bosnia-Herzegovina, for example, it would give them greater ownership. They would feel more a part of the empire. And it would also really take the wind out of the sails of Serbia, and so hopefully ease the whole tension between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, and between Austria-Hungary and Russia. But he was assassinated. So I'm now going to turn to something really interesting, something I had never thought of in all the years I have taught World War I and its causes. And I got it from a book by Henry Kissinger called Diplomacy. And he writes about the fact that the funeral for Franz Ferdinand was a very small affair. Emperor Joseph didn't actually like Franz Ferdinand, and so he instructed the royal houses of Europe not to come to the funeral. He wanted a very low-key affair. Now, Henry Kissinger writes, what if Tsar Nicholas had attended the funeral? What if Kaiser Wilhelm had attended the funeral? And representatives, senior representatives from the British government and the French government. Surely they would have talked about the issue. Surely they would have talked things over. And they wouldn't have come to any great solution at the funeral, but they would have opened the door to more discussion. And if nothing else, the diplomats and the politicians in the major powers would have been prepared for what was to come. A little more prepared, at least, for what was to come. So I think I show in these examples, and there are others in my book, that there were alternative paths that could have been taken. Never mind the fact that there was a wrong turning made by the chauffeur, the driver of Franz Ferdinand. And so war was not inevitable. So I think this gives you a different insight into the causes of World War I that I think is useful, and I certainly think is interesting. It's been a long video. I hope you're still with me, but I thank you for listening. Cheers.